With the PSVR costing over £400 to buy it on its own, and then when you account for the Move controller and the camera, it gets quite pricey. And if you want a PC VR, you're looking at £700 to £770 for a HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift with touch controllers. So it's safe to say that VR is still currently in an enthusiast zone in terms of pricing, both for hardware and the software, if you look at the Steam prices for some VR games. Now, virtual reality requires a PC that can run a game at 90 FPS on a 2K screen, because the Vive and the Oculus both operate with two 1080p screens, which merge together make 2K. And this is quite difficult, and is why the general consensus is VR titles look quite stylized to make up for the fact that they can't really push hardcore graphics, because otherwise everyone will have to own a GTX 1080 Ti, which isn't a very smart way of marketing your products. With the exception of course, Fallout 4, which is coming out later this year, a lot of games that go to this extent probably aren't optimized well enough to hit 90 frames, and so therefore reprojection kicks in, which drops down the frames to 45 frames per second, but duplicates frames to give it off the impression that it's smooth. This isn't exactly the best solution, as it kind of makes it feel weird in the headset in terms of like how you turn your head, and it's also can mess up some of the gameplay features, but if you're on a budget, then it's a perfectly acceptable thing and it doesn't ruin the game too much. What I'm trying to say is that a budget VR PC, unfortunately, isn't as cheap as a budget normal gaming PC, which you can normally pick up for like £500. So for this, I'd like to just go through my recommendation for a £750 VR PC. This is minus peripherals. And to start, we're going to start with the motherboard, which is a Gigabyte B250M-D3H Intel Kaby Lake Matax. The reason why I chose this is because it fits all the parts in this list and only comes in at £75 to £80, so it's not as expensive as some of the motherboards out there, but still has all the functionality that you need. For the GPU, the recommended spec is a GTX 970, but those only come with 3GB of VRAM, and the way that VRAM is being used more and more in modern gaming, I feel like it's better just to pay an extra 40 quid in spring for the GTX 1060 6GB edition, which will run you about £230 to £260, depending on where you buy it from. And I feel like that's the best way of future-proofing the system so that you can still use it in 2 years and not have to buy a new card like at the end of the year. For the CPU, sticking with an i5 instead of an i7, because not enough games support i7 at this point. And it's going to be the 7600 Kaby Lake processor, and its GPU clocks in at 3.5 gigahertz per core, and turbo mode pushes it to 4.1 gigahertz. This processor will basically handle any game you throw at it, unless you're trying to turn stuff onto the max settings or playing some really intense VR game that doesn't really run elsewhere. For the RAM, I've decided not to skimp on it for the sake of future-proofing. So 16 gigabytes in two sets of 8 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance LPX, and this is going to be 3000 speed, I believe, and it will set you back about 100 to 110 depending on where you buy it, but it's definitely worth it for that future-proofing. For the storage, you want to have a decent amount, because games are getting quite big these days. Some games are getting to like 70 gigabytes. Most of the hits settling around the 30 to 40 gigabyte mark. VR game is smaller, but I do expect them to make bigger games as the years go by, and so I recommend the 3 terabyte Seagate Barracuda 3.5 inch at 7200 RPM. This is only going to set you back 80 quid. It's a great hard drive. It's actually the one I have in my computer. And, you know, if you don't want to spring for a solid state, I think it's a good just base hard drive. For the power supply unit, I'm going to go quite simple and just get the Corsair 500 watt PCU from the builder's range, because you don't really, because the card will never really run past about 400 watts in the first place. Even if you overclock it, you're not getting near that 500 mark, so you're going to be safe. You're not going to melt your card or anything. And this is only going to set you back around 50 quid as well, so it's keeping it cheap, but also keeping it safe, which I think is quite important when you build a PC. And finally, and stuff that you actually require for the PC, is the case. And a lot of people like to go for like the flashy Novatech, I believe it's Novatech ones. The one I actually have is a Corsair Black. It's very sleek. It's very mute, and I quite like the simplicity of it, to have like a really powerful PC hidden inside a a pretty plain looking case. It's great for if you need to have it with, in public. People aren't going to instantly think, "Oh, that's worth a lot. I should nick it." So for this, I'm looking for the £24 Bitfenix Nova ATX mid tower case. It's very sleek. It's very white. Like I said, very muted. It's a decent size too. And so once you add all this up, it comes to about £732, £750, which is not bad for something that will definitely play your VR games that you want to play, but will also play a lot of current games at mid to high settings, depending on how you turn down other settings. But generally, just mid. There are some extra bits that you may or may not need. If you are someone that exclusively uses Wi-Fi, then you're going to need a Wi-Fi adapter, which will cost you around £20 to £25, depending on if you want to shop around, get a quality one that fits your router, or just go for a box standard one and test your luck with that. Then moving on is if it's your first PC ever, you might not have a keyboard, you might not have a mouse, you might not have a monitor, and so for that, if you're looking to be quite cheap, I recommend the £7 Dynamode keyboard and 3-button sculptured optical mouse bundle. So yeah, for £7, just have a keyboard and mouse. That's good. You can always upgrade it later if it's not to your liking. It's just a good starting point. And for the monitor, there is a nice 21.5-inch LG 22M38A for £75. It's going to be 1080p. That's going to do all your 2D games justice. Unless you want to spring an extra 400 for a 4K monitor, which you're not going to be able to do with a GTX 1060, or at least not any playable frame rates. And obviously, at the end of the day, you might not be comfortable building your own PC, and so there are several places that do it for you. I know PC World, you can bring it in, and they'll charge you a certain amount. I wouldn't recommend that. They messed up my build once, and so, but what hasn't messed up my build is Aria PC. And there you can just go to their form and you can send them your product list of what you want them to build the PC with, and then they'll just charge you an extra £50 and they'll build it. They'll stress test it for 48 hours. They'll make sure everything's working, and then they'll send it for you all ready just to boot up and play. And the last thing that you might need is a copy of Windows 10 or Windows 7 or just any kind of Windows if you don't have any on you, and that's going to set you back another 70. And once you add this all up, then this build turns from a 750 build to a 950 build, which is not bad when you add all the extra peripherals and obviously stuff that's optional, but so it's still pretty good for a mid-range item that has obviously all the peripherals. Just to give a comparison, I recently helped my friend build his PC, and he wanted the bleeding edge, and that had it over 1,700 because it had a nice monitor, GTX 1080, lovely motherboard, really flashy case. So that's like the kind of difference. So it's pretty much a grand less if you go for the basic build, and it's not, in my opinion, a grand less in terms of performance. Obviously, if you want to upgrade the card to get a 1070 instead of 1060, spend an extra £60 on that, 60, 70, depending on offers, then I would definitely recommend that. More games will run smoother. And yeah, so that's the kind of build that I recommend. If you want to, see the names of the article without having to zoom back into the video, there is the article on our site, UkByGaming. It's called How to Build a VR-Capable PC on a Budget-ish. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you want me to turn any other articles into little news videos or little opinion pieces like this, and I'll try to do my best. Thanks.